This is something that I haven't wanted to think about, let alone speak publicly about. This is a topic which is spoken about in whispered conversations.
Something like this birth injury has affected my whole entire life. And you think that it wouldn't. It affects every aspect of it.
And there's still no clear reason as to why. And I think that not knowing is always going to haunt me.
The plan was to have a home birth. That was the plan. No interventions, so no medications trying to push me to do anything, just a simple birth.
I was struggling a little bit with my mental health and I wasn't very well supported. I'd called the crisis line on one occasion, and I remember the midwife at my next appointment said to me, "Why did you call them?" in quite an aggressive and accusatory tone. And that kind of started this pattern of feeling like I wasn't able to talk to the midwives about what was going on, and that I was very on my own.
During my pregnancy, because I'd had a history of anxiety and depression, which I'd flagged early on, I was aware that that potentially made me higher risk. One of the particular things that we tried to minimise was the impact of acute sleep deprivation. So that was very much front and centre in my notes.
During one of my normal antenatal appointments, I'd said I felt like Grace was a bit small, like I was 31, 32 weeks at the time, and was again reassured that everything's fine, she looks like she's grown perfectly. So I just kind of left it as it was. And then it was at the next appointment, so at the 34-week appointment, I once again said, I don't feel like she's big enough. Like I had a very small bump, and was told again, no, you're fine, everything's completely fine.
I didn't go into the birth with any particular expectation. I was really clear that I obviously wanted to know that she was going to be safe and that I was going to be safe.
Basically, we went into the hospital because it was like there was some water leaking, and I wasn't sure if it was my water breaking.
We got to the reception, and I remember the lady at reception said, no, you have to go to triage first. But a contraction came very strongly in that moment, and I made such a loud noise that several midwives kind of came running out the room.
I could hear by the questions that I was being asked that my notes hadn't been read, which also increases your anxiety at that stage. I think it's also important to say that by that stage of sleep deprivation and also of pain, you're not able to advocate for yourself in the way that you normally would do. By the time I went back into hospital on the Monday morning, I was in really acute pain. I was almost unconscious with pain. I was vomiting.
I just wanted it to be over. And so, I mean, this went on for hours, and then eventually the doctor came in, and she went in and ruptured the membranes and had my water break, finally.
And then I just felt this really sudden urge to push. And at that stage, when I felt the urge to push, I was in that room alone with my husband. There was no staff with us. I wasn't on a bed. I wasn't being monitored. My daughter wasn't being monitored. I hadn't been given any pain relief.
I remember being swayed back and forth like this, like just being, and I thought, my God, what is going on? I feel like a turkey. Like he's just stuffing me, or like just, like it's just ridiculous.
The midwife had one of the Dopplers, so to find where Grace's heartbeat was so they could get me on the monitor. And she just was struggling to find anything. And we were kind of both just there like, what's going on, what's happening?
I was told that there wouldn't be time for an episiotomy, so I was basically just going to have to push through, which meant splitting myself in half, basically.
One of the doctors came in with a ultrasound machine, and he said to me, Lauren, was that a contraction? And I said, yes. And he was like, I'm really sorry, but I can't find a heartbeat. And honestly, in that moment, the sounds that came out of me, I don't even know what they were. They're not something I could ever replicate. It was just this moment of pure horror and pain like nothing else that is imaginable.
This is clearly violent in every sense of the word, and I'm not shocked that I almost died, because the violent way that I was swayed.
Next thing, I just knew I had to push, and I remember shouting to the midwife, I need to push.
The pain was indescribable. I felt entirely expendable. It felt like it didn't matter what happened to me or my body, the most intimate part of my body. I felt just like a vessel.
In my mind, I was dying. So I was saying goodbye to my husband, and goodbye to my mom.
I remember just seeing red everywhere. And then the pain kind of went away and Grace was born. She was wrapped up in a towel and handed to me, and she was still really warm, and just a full, beautiful baby. And I was literally looking at her, begging her to just make a sound, just move her eyelids a little bit, just do something. They had to obviously keep her in a fridge, realistically. So she just got colder and colder and started deteriorating, which was a horrible thing to see and experience.
It feels so strange after you've delivered, and I can remember looking down at my body and feeling like it had become a battleground. And I think what was so difficult is to have something like that happen to you in a room full of people, and to know that something terrible has happened to you, but everyone is behaving as if it's completely normal.
The lady was like, oh, it's a 2nd-degree tear, superficial 2nd-degree tear. And I was like, are you sure? And I asked her like 3 times. If my son was fine, just some, damages from the forceps that they use. I forgot to mention that they use forceps, which is probably what caused the damage. The UK is still using them. It's disgusting. It's prehistoric.
Honestly, I should have been sent to theatre because I was at such an increased risk of having like a postpartum hemorrhage, having a massive bleed. But apparently the theatre was busy, so I was just kind of left to wait and hope nothing bad happens. Which again, it all of these things made me feel like this is because my baby's died that you don't care. You don't care that I'm in pain. You don't care that I can literally die here. Because my baby's dead, I don't matter.
I also felt very torn between, on the one hand, trying to understand the experience that I'd been through and trying to kind of piece myself back together physically and mentally from it, while also trying to step into this role that is expected of new mothers.
I don't remember a lot of I don't remember a lot of the time I spent with my baby. So I think that affected my relationship with my son.
I went on to develop an infection in my stitches, and that was missed on a number of occasions. In the end, I was in such agony that I took myself to the GP and just said, look, I think there's a serious issue here. And she took one look at it and said, I don't know how you've been able to sit down since you delivered. The infection is so acute.
One of the big ones was in those appointments where I was sharing my concerns about her growth. They hadn't actually been monitoring her growth properly. Her growth had massively tailed off. She was way under where she should have been. And if they'd have been logging that, that in itself, just even one of them, would have shown she is not growing properly.
I was at home and I needed to use the toilet. And then it wasn't like an urgent thing, but I felt like an urgent thing, an urgency. And so I picked him up and was carrying him, and all of a sudden, like feces, so like poop, like my own poop, feces was coming down my leg on my right side. And I thought, oh my God. I think I was there with 2 different doctors, and they did like a check down there. I don't even know what it was called. I think it was like a camera or something like that. And they got really quiet all of a sudden. And then they came over and they told me that I had suffered a 3rd-degree tear that was not checked properly, and that was left that way. So, and that there was pretty much nothing I can do about it other than physio. It was like I was run over by a car.
It completely derailed everything for me. I was in a relationship. I had a lovely job at the time. I had all my friends and family around. And obviously the grief of losing our child, and both me and my partner needing someone to blame at the time, rightfully or wrongfully, well, definitely wrongfully, we kind of just blamed each other a lot of the time, which was horrible.
It was not good. It was not good for any of us. My relationship with my husband, my relationship with my baby, my relationship with anybody. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do anything.
I can't personally believe I will ever have another child, as much as I want to. And I've always wanted kids. I'm maternal and I love kids and the idea of being a mum. But I don't, in my heart, think I'll be able to carry a baby and it be born alive. So yeah, the idea at the moment is too scary to even consider it.
I can't think of a more powerful statement of how society values women than how it treats them at the most vulnerable moment of their lives.
A Department of Health spokesperson said, "Too many women and families have been devastated by serious failings in NHS maternity and neonatal care. We are determined to deliver lasting change and ensure all families receive safe, high-quality maternity care. We have commissioned an urgent national independent investigation and are setting up a task force to root out systemic failures and deliver a plan of action."
At first I thought it was just me, but since, after meeting women, not just women whose babies have died, but just women in general who've been pregnant and had children, pretty much every single one of them says that I wasn't being listened to, I wasn't heard, my concerns were being ignored, is all the time, and it's everywhere. There's an increased numbers of babies dying. We're seeing it throughout the whole country. And that's what I kind of am campaigning for. It's what I've dedicated my life to because of Grace.